Daniel was on another one of his walks in the forest when suddenly a striking and beautiful plant caught his eye. It looked like a mushroom, but he had never seen anything like it before. He decided to bring it home with him, where he would take a better look at it. However, he had no idea that this seemingly small and simple action would lead to his entire street being sealed off the next day. And that wouldn't even be the worst that would happen to him. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The autumn sun was shining high as Daniel was walking through the forest, collecting various plants that he wanted to bring home. He couldn't wait to show his wife, Christy, the extraordinary mushroom that he had just found. It looked very strange, but that was exactly the reason why it had caught his eye. When he came home, Christy was busy in their vegetable garden. "Hey, Chris, you have to see what I found today. Check this out," Daniel said as he placed the basket on the ground next to her and opened it to take out the mushroom. When she finally saw it, she gasped with surprise. "Wow, it's beautiful," she exclaimed. "I know, right? I just couldn't leave it there. The only thing is, I have no idea what kind of mushroom this is. I don't even know if it's safe to eat. Do you have any idea?" he asked her. However, Christy shook her head and told him that she too had never seen anything like it before. "Daddy, what is that thing?" his daughter, Maya, asked. Her eyes were wide as she closely inspected the mushroom in front of her. "Can we eat it?" Daniel told her. "No, honey, not yet." They tried to look it up online, but they simply could not find any information about this specific mushroom. It was already getting late and time for bed, so they decided to take a photo of it and post it on an online forum. However, when they woke up the next morning, they heard a lot of commotion on the street outside. They had left the window open and they heard many people talking very loudly, almost even screaming. Christy got up from the bed and walked over to the window to take a look, and she was surprised to see the entire street was sealed off. It was complete chaos out there, and she recognized some of their neighbors talking to police officers. Police officers? Why are they here? He was still very sleepy, but as soon as he saw what was going on out there, he was shocked and wide awake. "Oh, wow, that can't be good," he said when he saw that the street was closed off. Being the curious person that he was, he got dressed and quickly walked down the stairs and out the front door, wanting to figure out what was happening. However, everything changed as soon as he opened the door. "There, that's him!" someone yelled while pointing a finger at Daniel. A police officer approached him and asked, "Are you Daniel Roberts?" To which he replied, "Yes, that's me." Before he even realized what was going on, the officer had handcuffed him. "You're going to have to come with me." "What? You're making a mistake," Daniel said, almost laughing. The officer led Daniel into a police car and told him, "Wait here. We'll drive you to the station in just a few minutes." Daniel was shocked. When they arrived at the police station, Daniel was brought to an interrogation room. The officers told him, "Wait here, someone will be with you shortly." Only minutes later, a woman dressed in a suit entered the room, followed by the officer who had cuffed Daniel earlier. "Good morning, Daniel. I am Detective Jacobs. This is my colleague, Officer Williams. I have a couple of questions to ask you if you don't mind." Daniel nodded, saying, "Sure, no problem. I don't know what it is you think I have done, but I will happily answer all of your questions if it can help me prove my innocence." "I wouldn't be so sure about that just yet," the detective told him with a smug look on her face. "Well, what do you want to know?" he asked, wanting to get on with it. The detective sighed and then asked, "Daniel, where were you yesterday?" He answered her question honestly, hoping that this would clear some things up. "Whatever it is you think I have done, it's not true. I have been in the forest all day." But he didn't know that that was exactly what the detective was hoping to hear. However, before she could ask the next question, the door opened and a man in a long white lab coat appeared. "Detective, do you have a moment?" he asked. Detective Jacobs left the room and returned only a minute later, telling her colleague, "Get him into a cell. I have to take care of some business first." Whatever it was, it appeared to be very urgent. But Daniel was shocked, and he exclaimed, "What are you talking about, a cell? No, I refuse!" However, his plan wasn't working, and minutes later he found himself behind locked bars. The cold, hard floor of the cell pressed against Daniel's back as he tried to find a comfortable position. As the hours dragged on, Daniel clung to the hope that someone would come. The dim light filtering through the small window in his cell began to fade, signaling the approach of night. The night stretched on, each moment feeling longer than the last. The first rays of sunlight had barely touched the horizon when the sound of footsteps approached Daniel's cell. The metallic rattle of keys preceded the appearance of an officer, his face unreadable. "Mr. Roberts," he began, his voice echoing in the cold chamber, "there have been developments. We need to talk." The officer's words were measured but carried a weight of urgency. "Your family," he hesitated, searching for the right words. "They've been placed in quarantine. There's concern about potential exposure." Daniel's heart raced. Exposure? To what? The officer continued, "You'll be moved too for everyone's safety." Panic gripped Daniel. "Wait! I need to speak to them. Are they okay? Christy? Maya?" His voice cracked with desperation. The officer's eyes softened momentarily, revealing a hint of sympathy. "I'm just following orders, Mr. Roberts. You'll be briefed soon." But Daniel's pleas grew more frantic, his need to connect with his family overpowering. The process was swift. 2 officers escorted Daniel down a series of sterile hallways. They stopped in front of a sealed door labeled "Quarantine." Inside, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on Daniel. The room was equipped with a bed, a table, and medical instruments. Why was his family quarantined? What had they been exposed to? And most importantly, would they be okay? The door to Daniel's quarantine room opened with a soft hiss, revealing Detective Jacobs. Her face was stern, and her eyes focused intently on Daniel. "Mr. Roberts," she began, her voice firm, "we need to discuss the mushroom you found." Daniel's heart raced. Detective Jacobs placed a sealed bag on the table. Inside was the mushroom, its unique appearance even more striking up close. "This," she began, "is not just any mushroom. It's rare, and its properties are concerning." Daniel frowned, trying to grasp her meaning. "It's not native to our region, and its presence here raises many questions." The detective continued, "Your discovery has set off a chain of events. Various agencies are now involved, and there's a scramble to understand how and why this mushroom is here." Daniel felt a sinking feeling. "I just thought it was unique," he whispered. Jacobs nodded. "And that's the problem. Its uniqueness is what's causing the alarm." Detective Jacobs leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "This isn't just about a mushroom, Daniel. Your discovery has opened a door to a much larger issue, one that we're only beginning to understand." As Daniel tried to process the detective's words, a sudden, uncomfortable itch on his hand distracted him. Glancing down, his heart skipped a beat. Red spots, previously unnoticed, now marred his skin in an alarming pattern. They weren't there before, were they? Detective Jacobs, noticing Daniel's growing distress, spoke up with urgency. "Your family noticed similar symptoms earlier. Christy and Maya are deeply worried, especially for you." Daniel's eyes widened in horror, his mind racing. "Are they okay? Are these spots dangerous?" The detective's face softened, revealing a hint of empathy amidst the professional demeanor. Hours turned into days, and the red spots on Daniel's hands began to spread at an alarming rate. Despite his own growing discomfort, Daniel's thoughts constantly drifted to Christy and Maya. Were they experiencing the same painful symptoms? Seeing Daniel's visible anguish, Detective Jacobs approached him with a sense of purpose. "Listen, Daniel," she began, her voice softer than he'd heard before. "We have top medical professionals working diligently on this. Your family is in good hands, and we're doing everything we can to understand and treat these symptoms swiftly." She paused, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this together." In the sterile confines of the quarantine cell, Daniel paced restlessly. Each tick of the unseen clock amplified his anxiety. The familiar sound of Detective Jacobs' footsteps echoed outside Daniel's cell. The door opened, revealing her stern face, but this time there was a hint of optimism in her eyes. "Mr. Roberts," she began, her tone more gentle than before, "we might have some good news for you." Daniel, weary and desperate for relief, clung to her every word. From her pocket, Jacobs produced a small jar filled with a creamy substance. "This," she explained, "is an experimental ointment developed specifically for your condition." She handed it to him, instructing him to apply it liberally to the affected areas. As he applied the ointment, a cooling sensation immediately washed over his hands. The burning, which had been relentless, began to subside. Hours turned into days, and with each application, the red spots faded and the pain diminished. Hope, which had been a distant memory, began to bloom in Daniel's heart once more. With the worst of his symptoms behind him, Daniel's strength and spirit began to return. The ointment, it seemed, was working wonders. Detective Jacobs slid a printed screenshot across the table. It was Daniel's online post of the mushroom. "This," she began, her voice firm, "is what started it all." Daniel recognized the image immediately, his heart sinking. "After you posted this, alarms were raised. That mushroom is not just any mushroom," she continued, her gaze unwavering. She leaned in, explaining, "This particular mushroom is known to be highly poisonous. Moreover, it's not native to this region. Given its rarity and the dangers associated with it, the police initially thought you might have obtained it illegally," Jacobs said, her tone accusatory. Daniel's shock was palpable. "I just found it in the forest," he protested. "I had no idea about its significance." Jacobs nodded. "That's what we're trying to ascertain." After days of investigation, the police were able to verify Daniel's account. Surveillance footage from forest cameras confirmed his innocent discovery. "It seems you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time," Jacobs admitted, her demeanor softening. "We found no evidence to suggest any wrongdoing on your part." The next morning, an officer entered Daniel's cell with a stack of papers. "Your release documents," he announced. Relief washed over Daniel. The ordeal was finally coming to an end. As he signed the papers, he couldn't help but think of the forest, the mushroom, and the unexpected chaos that one simple discovery had wrought. Stepping out into the daylight, Daniel was met with the sight he had longed for: Christy and Maya, waiting anxiously. They rushed towards him, their embrace warm and tight, a tangible relief from the cold isolation of the past days. Weeks later, the family decided to revisit the forest, but this time there was a palpable caution in their steps. They walked with a heightened awareness, respecting boundaries and refraining from picking anything. The forest, with its myriad mysteries, welcomed them back, but the memories of their ordeal served as a constant, vigilant reminder. As they walked, Daniel mused aloud, "Nature has its own language, its own wisdom." Christy agreed, "It's a delicate balance, and we're just a small part of it." Maya, holding her parents' hands, looked up at the towering trees. "We need to listen more, learn more, and always remember the lessons it teaches us." The forest, in its silent majesty, seemed to nod in agreement.